So today we're going to be talking about this May 2020 paper. It is the supplementary paper for IEB 2021. So it was written in May 2022. Okay. So we're going to go through the section A. I think it's the first 6 questions. Without much ado, let's get into it. Section A, question 1. So this first question here says, solve for x if the root of 2x minus 7 is equals to 2. Now to answer this question, the first thing we need to do is remove the root. And the easiest way to remove the root is by squaring both sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write and therefore this square can cancel out this root. So you're left with simplifying, your answer will be 11 over 2. And that's it. Okay, next question. Question B here says solve for x if 3x minus 1 bracket squared is equals to x plus 1 bracket squared. Now, there are two ways of answering this. We could square root both sides, right? And we could also expand, then we try to simplify. What I'm going to do for this question is I'll first of all open out the bracket by expanding. Basically, this means that this is so if I open out the bracket, right, I FOIL, I'm going to get okay, so next thing I group like terms, so it's going to give me okay, I could also bring out common factors. I notice 8x is common, so I would have so therefore my answers are x equals to 0 and x is equals to 1. Okay, so that will be your answer. C says solve for x if 49 to the power x is equals to 7 to the power x minus 2. Now we understand that we can rewrite 49 as an exponent, meaning that this can be written as this, which as you know, we can rewrite it properly also like this. Now, whenever your bases are the same, the exponents are equal. So therefore, you would have, moving next to the other side, and your answer is x equals to negative 2. That's it. For question D, they ask us to solve for x if the log of 2x squared minus 3x plus 10 is equals to 3. Now, to answer this question, we need to rewrite our logs in terms of exponent. An easier way to remember it is this. We understand that the log of 1,000 is equals to 2. Rewriting this as an exponent is 10 squared is equals to 100. Now we can see that our base still remains our base. We'll see that whatever we have equals to becomes our power, and whatever you have left is on the other side. So if you kind of remember this, we can apply that to this question. So literally this can be written as, then we'll have our base to the power of 3, which is exactly like we talked about here. Now simplifying this will give you now since this is a trinomial, it could be factorized to give you, and therefore your answers for x is equals to 2 and x is equals to 1. That's it. So the last question in question 1 says, which is E, solve for x in terms of p for the equation of 2x squared plus 3px is equals to negative p squared. Now to answer this, the first thing we'll do is move this p over to the other side, right? So we have this. Now looking at this here, this looks exactly like a trinomial, right? So we'll factorize it like a trinomial, right? By opening two brackets. Looking at this one here, the factors we can get from 2x squared is 2x and x. The factors we can get from p squared is just p and p. Now, because we have positive 3 over here, we understand that this here will both be positives. So for that reason, our answers. Now, since you want to solve for x in terms of p, we write this in terms. So we're writing like this. So therefore, moving p over to the other side and simplifying, you're going to get okay, so the first answer is x is equal to negative p over 2, or the second answer would be, that's it. So this would be your two answers that you have for E. That's all. And that's it for question 1. Question 2. Now we're given this sigma notation. This sigma notation, we have, it's a sum to infinity sigma notation. The equation of the sigma notation is 49 open bracket 7 to the power of negative n. The first value we substitute is n is equals to 1. Now, the first question asks us to write down the first two terms of this series. So since for this equation we have to start with n is equals to 1, we substitute that as our first term. So meaning we're going to have, and therefore this one here would be 49 times 1 over 7, which is 7. Then for the second term, we have negative 2, because that will be the next term. So it is 49 times 1 over 49, which is equals to 1. So our first two terms of this series is 7 and 1. Now question 2 asks us to calculate sum to infinity. If you're trying to find your sum to infinity, what we normally do is we write the equation to start with. So the sum to infinity equation looks like this. Okay, now from here we can see from our first two terms, our a is equals to 7. Since this is a geometric sequence, our r is 1 over 7 because t2 divided by t1 gives you 1 over 7. We substitute these two into our equation. This here would be, and if you put all this in the calculator, 7, 1 minus 1 over 7. And that gives you 49 over 6. Okay, so the sum to infinity is equals to 49 over 6. That's it for question 2. Now for B, it says consider the quadratic sequence 2, 5, 6, 5, 2. Determine the nth term of the sequence in the form of Tn is equals to an squared plus bn plus c. Since it's a quadratic sequence, it usually has two differences, right? And the second difference is always common, right? It's always the same. So let's write this out. First of all, I write it like this. Now making our first difference, meaning subtracting each of the consecutive terms you're going to get. And getting our second difference, which we expect to be equal. This one's going to give you 1 minus 3 is negative 2. Negative 1 minus negative 1 gives you negative 2. Negative 3 minus minus 1 gives you negative 2. So now we normally say that this, so A is equals to this here, 3A plus B is equals to this, and this A plus B plus C. So simplifying this to get our values, we're going to say that 2A is equals to negative 2. So therefore, A is equals to negative 1. Now substituting A into the second equation, we're going to have 3, negative 1, plus B is equals to 3. So therefore, we're going to have B is equals to 6 when that moves over. Then for the third one, you're going to have negative 1 plus 6 plus C is equals to the term here, which is 2, right? So this is 5. 5 goes over, it becomes negative 5. So you have C is equals to negative 3. So our equation for Tn is negative n squared plus 6n minus 3. So that's the equation that will be given. Okay, so that's all they wanted from you for question 2, and that's it. So the next question, question 3. Now, this question says, if Carrier took a loan of 1.8 million to purchase a house at the start of 2008, and the bank charged her an interest of 9.25% per annum compounded monthly over a 30-year contract period. Calculate her monthly repayment. Now, we need to assume that she received the loan immediately and the first payment was made at the end of the first month. Okay. Now, because we are working with loans, we understand that we have to use present value, right? Present value annuity. Now, present value represents the amount of money I'm going to get right now, and I would be returning the money as a monthly repayment over a period of time. Now, the present value is going to be 1.8 million. The interest rate of this loan collected is 9.25%, so we can write it as 0.0925 divided by 12. Now, we do divide it by 12 because it was compounded monthly. We're also told that this loan is going to take place over a 30-year period. And since you're paying monthly, so we'll multiply 30 by 12, so we'll have 360 repayments. And we're trying to get the monthly installments, so X is what we're trying to get. Okay, now the formula for present value annuity looks like this. Okay, so since we're trying to find this X, so we're writing our formula so that X is the subject. So now we can substitute each of our values. So we can put all this in the calculator. We'll get so the answer would be 14808,16. That's it. So B asks us to calculate her outstanding balance at the end of 12 years. Now, the outstanding balance is the present value after 12 years. Okay? So if that's the case, we're still going to use present value formula. Now, there are some things that will still remain the same. Our X would be the same thing we had in the previous question, which was 14,808,16. Our interest rate would also remain the same. So this will be 0,0925 divided by 12. The number of years is what will be different. Now, because you've paid 12 years, it means that you still have 30 minus 12 years left. Okay, now the answer we get, we multiply that by 12, which would give us 30 minus 12, 18 times 12, 216. So what that means is that you still have 216 payments to make at that particular moment, okay? And we are trying to find the present value of what that would be, okay? So using our present value formula, we can just substitute each of those values in there. It's going to be okay. So we just need to substitute all this in the calculator. So after 12 years, the outstanding balance would be 1.5 million, right? I think that is 1,555,284, 284,45. 284,45. Okay, so that is 1,555,284 rand 45 cents. So this is the amount of money that will still be left after paying for 12 years. That's it. So this is question 4. Now question 4 says, given that f of x is equals to 3 over x plus 2 plus 1, sketch the graph of y is equals to f of x. Okay, so since this is hyperbola, we would need a certain key point. Now, the first thing that we'll look at is the shape. Now, this 3 represents our a, and if a is greater than 0, it means our graph is going to look like this. Okay, so that's the first thing we need to know. The second thing we need to also know is our asymptote. Now the asymptote is gotten from the value we have here, which is our x asymptote, and this one here helps us get our y asymptote. Okay, now we would say that our x asymptote is -2 and our y asymptote is +1. Okay, now the next thing we also need to get is our x and y intercepts. To get our x and y intercept, we're going to say x intercept y is equals to 0. I substitute. Okay, so cross multiplying, this would give me. So therefore, x is equals to, I think that's -5. Yeah, -5. Now, the coordinate we have from here would be -5 and 0. Okay, now we also need to get our y-intercept. Okay, so our y-intercept looks like this. X is equals to 0. So therefore, this would be y is equals to 3 over 0 plus 2 plus 1. So I have 3 over 2 plus 1, which is 5 over 2. So the coordinate will be 0 and 2.5. We have our asymptotes, we have our intercepts. Now with that, we can sketch our graph. Now let's start with drawing our asymptote. Now each division on your Cartesian plane represents 1 unit. Okay, so it means let's put down key values that we want. We understand that the asymptote is for x is -2, so this here will represent -2. For the y asymptote is +1, this will represent 1. Our x-intercept is -5, so there's 3, 4, 5, so this here is -5. We have our y-intercept as 2.5, so if this is 2, right, so this is 2, this is 3, so in between there would be 2.5. Okay, and I think that is it, right? I think we have all the values. Yes, okay, so now let's plot all of this. So the first thing we'll do is we're going to draw our asymptote. So we're going to draw a straight line through this. Then the y-asymptote, we'll draw also another straight line through this. So since we expect our graph to look like this, so put this at the back of your mind when you're drawing. Okay, so all our graph is going to be here. It's going to go like this. Okay, and the second part of our graph would go like this. And that's it. So this will be the graph of f of x. That's exactly what they wanted. Okay. Now, question 2 asks us for our domain. Now, the domain of every hyperbola graph is always x is an element of real numbers, but it's not equals to the asymptote. Now, since the asymptote is -2, it is not equal to -2. So this will be your answer. Now, in B, the question says, in the sketch below, the graph of f of x is equals to 3 to the power of x is given, which is this. Now, the graph of G is the reflection of f in the line y is equals to x. Now, what this means is that this is the inverse of this f graph. Whenever you have this statement, reflection in the line y is equals to x, it actually just means the inverse. The first question asks us to determine the equation of G. So like I said, it is the inverse. That is what you need to put at the back of your mind while answering this. So I'm saying the original graph is y is equals to 3 to the x, and since it's the inverse, it is going to be x is equals to 3 to the y, and therefore we can now say that g of x is equals to the log of 3 to the x over there, and that will be your answer. Now, question 2 here says, determine with the aid of the sketches given above the values for x, for which 3 to the power x is greater than 0, and log 3 to the x is less than 0. Now, what this actually means is that they are asking you that the f of x is greater than 0. That's what that means. And this here is actually saying the g of x is less or equals to 0. And don't forget that this also represents y. So the y of this is greater than 0. And also this also represents y. The y of this is less than 0, right? So let's start with them individually. Now, to answer this question, we need to focus on the x-axis line, right? So this line here is your x-axis. And on the x-axis line, we understand that y is equals to 0. Now, anything above it, y is greater than 0. And anything below it, y is less than 0. Okay, so now for our f graph, we can clearly see that every value of x would be above the y is equals to 0 line, which is our x-axis line. So our simple answer for this is just going to be x is an element of real numbers. We could also write it like this. X is from -infinity to +infinity. It represents all the values. Okay. For the second one, which is a g, now we understand that y is equals to 0, x is 1 in this part here. right? So anything below it, because we want less than 0, right? Yes, less than 0, less or equals to 0. Okay, so part of the first part of our answer is definitely x is equals to 1. Now, the second part of our answer is all the x value below this line, right? Below this. So as you can see, it starts from 1, which is here, and it keeps going until this line over here. And this line, x is equals to 0. So how we represent that in the question would be x is definitely less or equals to 1, but it has to be greater than 0, right? Because you don't have any value less than 0. And that's it. So moving on to the next question, question 5. Now this question says if f of x is equals to negative 2x squared plus 3x, determine the derivative of fx from first principles. Now, to find first principles, the first thing we need to write down is the formula for first principles. And the formula for first principle looks like this. Okay. Now, the next thing we also need to find is what fx plus h is. So if fx is negative 2x squared plus 3x, it would mean that fx plus h would be, yeah, replacing x with x plus h. Now simplifying this, okay, so that is the formula for fx plus h. We can substitute this into the first principle formula, so this is what you're going to have. So simplifying this, you're going to get, the h's can cancel out, you'll be left with. Now we can finally use our limits. So to give you, so the final answer for the derivative of fx would be negative 4x plus 3. And that's it. So B. Now B, you have two questions. They want you to find the y dx, which is the derivative of these two questions. The first one was y is equals to 2x squared minus 4x plus 5. Now to answer a question like this, we need to remember that whenever we have this, the derivative of this would be, right? We multiply the exponent by the coefficient, and we write it, and we subtract the exponent from 1, and that's your derivative. So in this case here, this would give you 6x squared minus 4. Now to answer question 2, before you can differentiate it, it needs to look like this to start with. So meaning that I need to rewrite this. So rewriting this can be, yeah, so this is just a little bit of a reminder of what you learned in exponents. Whenever you have a square root, it can be rewritten as a fraction. And whenever you have your exponents in the denominator, it can be brought up to the numerator by assigning a negative to it. Okay, so the differentiation of this would be, yeah, so I multiplied this negative 2 over 5 times the 1 that was originally here, and I subtracted 1 from the negative 2 over 5, and that will give you negative 7 over 5, and that will be your answer. Okay, that's all with B. Then let's talk about C. So C here says, given that fx is equals to negative 1 over 3x cubed plus x squared plus 3x plus 1, for what value or values of x is the function increasing? Now, whenever you have a question that they're asking you where is your function increasing, how we normally get it is by getting the derivative, but not just getting the derivative. We need to say our derivative is greater than 0. Now, the part that it is greater than 0 is the part that it is increasing. And you kind of guessed it, although we don't need it for this question. But the part that is less than 0 is the part that is decreasing. Okay, so that's exactly how you get it, right? So as I said, this is not so important, so let me just clean this off. So fully focusing on this, we get the derivative of this, right? So the derivative of fx would be negative x squared. Okay, and this here would be plus 2x, and that is plus 3. Okay, now we said that this, yeah, because that's the derivative of fx, would be greater than 0. Okay, so this is now an inequality problem. So to solve inequalities, we need to factorize this. So to help me factorize this, I will bring out a negative. Looks a little bit better. Minus 3. Okay, so this would be x minus 3 and x plus 1. The critical values for this would be negative 1 and 3. We'll put this into a number line to help us find the value for x. Okay, so I'm going to draw a little straight line here, and on this number line I'm going to substitute negative 1, and I'm going to put 3. Now, since this is a parabola, a quadratic equation, but it's a negative quadratic equation, we understand that if I draw just a sketch, our parabola looks like that. This, our parabola, has to be greater than 0. So just like in the previous question, I said that this, our inequality line, is y is equals to 0. So everything above it would be y is greater than 0. So I'm going to shade the part above it, meaning that I'm just focusing on that piece over there. So this part is the only part that y is greater than 0. So our answers would actually just be -1, x, and 3. So the part of our function that would be increasing will be from x is -1 to 3. And that's your answer. So on to the next one, question 6. Now this question says, consider a group of 40 students. 20 play cricket, 25 play basketball, 6 plays both cricket and basketball. Now we have a student selected at random from the group. Let C be the event that the student plays cricket, and let B be the event that the student plays basketball. Now add the event C, which represents cricket, and B, which represents basketball, mutually exclusive. Now for this, we're actually going to say no. The reason why it is no is because we have people that play both cricket and basketball, right? We have 6 students that play both of them, right? Because we have the value of C and B is equals to 6. So for that reason, we know that it cannot be mutually exclusive. For two events to be mutually exclusive, there should be no intersection between those two events. Okay, next question. Question 2 here says calculate the probability of C or B. Now, to calculate your probability of C or B, the formula we normally use is this is equals to the probability of C plus the probability of B minus the probability of C and B. Okay, now the probability of C, since we have 20 students playing cricket, it would mean that this is 20 over 40 and plus 25 playing basketball, so this is 25 over 40 minus the probability of both, which is 6 over 40. Okay, so if you put all this in your calculator, you will get the probability of cricket or basketball to be 39 over 40. And that's exactly what they wanted you to do. On to question B. This question says there are 20 treats in the box. 10 are chocolate and 10 are marshmallows. Nelson randomly selects 2 treats without replacement. Draw a tree diagram showing all possible outcomes. Okay, so draw my tree diagram. I'm going to use C to represent the chocolate and M would represent the marshmallows. Okay, so we are going to remove 2 traits without replacement. So let's start with the first event. So now for the first event, Nelson could either choose between chocolate, which is C, or marshmallow. Now since there are 10 of each, making the total 20, it means that the probability of choosing the chocolate will be 10 over 20, and the probability of choosing the marshmallow would be also 10 over 20. Okay. Now, what if he actually chose the chocolate and he wants to choose either chocolate or marshmallow? We need to represent that. So basically, I'm going to draw another tree for just the chocolate and say that the choices also is your chocolate or marshmallow. But if you've removed one of the chocolate for this, it will actually affect the total for the next, meaning that this will be 9 over a total of 19. Not only is one chocolate being removed, also one from the total is also removed. Now this here doesn't change, you're just going to have 10 over 19. So for the second part over here, we do very similar things. Same thing, we're still working with chocolate and marshmallows. Now remember that we are focusing on the marshmallow branch. So one of this marshmallow has been removed. So definitely the chocolate is still going to remain the same, but because one has been removed from the marshmallow, so this will be 10 over 19. And since the marshmallow was removed here, this would be 9 over 19. Okay, so this here is the tree diagram they wanted. Now B says determine the probability that the 2 traits are different. As you see from the original question, this here would mean if I go from here to here, This person chooses chocolate on both occasions. This one here means this is chocolate, then marshmallow. This here means this is marshmallow, then chocolate. And finally, this one here, it is marshmallow and marshmallow. Now, since they want it to be different, I'm actually looking at either choosing the marshmallow first or choosing the chocolate first, then the opposite is for the second choice. Okay? So we would say that the probability of the two treats being different is saying the probability of choosing marshmallow and chocolate or the probability of choosing chocolate and marshmallow. So from this here, we would just say for chocolate and marshmallow, we're going to multiply this and that. Now for marshmallow and chocolate, we're going to multiply this and that, which is kind of the same thing, right? But we need to write it out properly, right? So this one here would be 10 over 20 times 10 over 19. Now, because it is or, that means positive, then we would have 10 over 20 times 10 over 19. So this gives you, let's put this in the calculator real quick. Okay, so the answer is 10 over 19, right? So the probability of the treats being different is 10 over 19. That's exactly what they wanted. Okay, all done. Now the last question here, question C, says consider the letters of the word square. If the letters are arranged in any order without repetition to form a different word, determine the probability that the word will start with an S and end with an E. Okay, so the first thing, if you rearrange square without this restriction, the numbers of ways it can be written is 6 factorial. But if you have a specific restriction, it would be something different. Now, to get this, what we can do is we can represent our position as dashes, the position that each of these letters are going to take as possible dashes. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this 6-letter word, each letter would represent one of this dash, would go into one of this dash. Now, since we need to start from an S, it means that there's only one choice you can start with this word. And also there's also one choice you can end with the word because it has to start with an S, end with an E. So there's a choice here. So only one letter can be chosen at the start and only one letter can be chosen at the end. Now, if that's the case, it would mean that 2 letters has actually been excluded from a total of 6. So we still have Q, we still have U, we still have A, we still have R that can fit into this one. So there's actually the next one after S would have 4 choices. Any of those 4 letters can be substituted into this. Okay, and moving down the line, you would lose one letter as you go down. So meaning that this here will be 3, this here will be 2, this here will be 1. Because remember, 1 will be taken from here, so you're left with 3. 1 will be taken from here, you're left with 2. And finally, whichever is left is what you're going to put here. Now, this whole thing can be represented as 4 factorial. Now, since they're asking you for the probability, all you just need to say is 4 factorial over the 6 factorial, right? And that there should give you 1 over 30. And that's exactly what they wanted you to do for this question. That's it.